Hello everyone, and welcome to Code Reptile. Look at that, I am alive. I might look like I just walked out of a forest, because I kind of did. For those of you who don't know, I was trying to finish my higher education, and the university sucked the soul out of me. It was really, really hard, but it's coming to an end, finally. And so I'm really hoping that I'll be able to stream a lot more. I'm hoping that I'll be able to make a lot more videos. And with that out of the way, I want to continue our Epic KSP stream series. So for those of you who don't know, previously on this series, what we've done, well, so far, we've actually managed to... I just want to make like a small recap. Yes, I am playing career, and so what we've done is, so far, we have a little bit of a space station going around Mun. We've got a big space station in low carbon orbit that we can use to refuel and a lot of stuff like that. We also have a bunch of relay satellites. So we've got these Bumblebee satellites that provide pretty much 100% coverage around Kerbin. We also have a bunch of polar satellites, which are designed to collect some data about Kerbin. We also have one around Minmus, should be somewhere here. I think it's just, yeah, it's shown as a relay satellite. And yes, it also acts as a relay satellite. And we've done a bunch of missions to Minmus, to Mun, just basic exploration and stuff. But right now, I'm actually starting to think that we should attempt to finally go interplanetary. And so the problem with going interplanetary, there are like several issues with doing so. First of all, is that, well, it takes a lot of time. I mean, it just literally takes a lot of time to travel such a large distance. But more importantly, you need a very good connection, because, well, you know, you need enough signal strength. So we couldn't do that in the early stages just because we didn't have proper antennas. And even once we had that, we still needed to figure one thing out, and that is I am playing with remote tech. So what remote tech does is it gives you signal delay. So for example, if I switch to this polar probe, just for example, if I switch to it, you'll notice that in the upper left corner, yeah, there's like this little display here, and it shows the signal delay. And so for this satellite around Minmus, it's about 150 milliseconds, which is not a lot. It's like, you know, your relatively high-ish ping, but you probably won't notice it unless the signal is relayed like weirdly. If you for some reason have to relay signals over multiple satellites and it kind of bounces back and forth, in such a case you might feel like a little bit of delay, but in general you're basically playing real time. However, if I were to go to another planet, well, then the delay is not something that you can just kind of ignore and shove under the carpet. There, the delay is going to be on the order of seconds and on the order of minutes, depending like which planet you go and how far they are away. And for our exploration of Eve that I want to do, the delay is 70 seconds. In worst case scenario. So basically you press a button and for 70 seconds nothing happens. And then 70 seconds later, it executes whatever it is that you've done. And that is provided you have a connection in the first place. And so establishing a relay network over Kerbin, over Minmus, over Mun, that's a little annoying, but in general, it's not really a problem. Establishing it around, for example, Eve, is significantly harder. What makes it even more difficult to accomplish is that it takes just a lot of time to get there. And so the problem is that I wanted to start this stream with like, let's kick off season 2 of our exploration with going to Eve. Let's go to Eve. But here's the thing. Normally, you want to go to other planets during the optimal transfer window. So what is that? That is, you basically wait for a perfect time so that once you launch from our planet of origin, Kerbin in this case, so that once we go into orbit, we reach Eve at precisely the right time. However, it's still possible to intercept it at whatever time it is that you want. The problem is that you will need more delta V. And so with more delta V, there are several problems. That makes your entire rocket bigger, and that means that you have to schedule like a long burn once you get there. And we don't have like the upgraded launch pads, so there are like some limitations to how big we can make our rockets. But I thought like, hey, you know what? We're going to Eve. Eve is notorious in that it has like a very dense atmosphere, so we can easily aerobrake, right? And so I thought, like, well, why don't we launch like right now, so we could wait like 379 days for the optimal transfer window, or we could just YOLO it right now and then just aerobrake into orbit. What could possibly go wrong? And so I started building a probe with the main goal that I want to start establishing a relay network around Eve. So I want to send 1 or 2 probes that I'm just going to put in like a polar, maybe one in equatorial orbit, and they will provide the most of the coverage to Eve and the system in general, and they will have large interplanetary grade antennas that will give a very strong signal from Eve to Kerbin. And then once I have those antennas in place, I can actually start launching a lot of smaller probes that don't have these interplanetary antennas, because I already have a system of relays in place at Eve. Sounds good, right? And so I go to design the probe, but the problem is, if I launch right now, we'll have to take a rather weird orbit. Let me just show you. I'm gonna switch to Aurora. Aurora's not gonna be the one who's gonna actually go to Eve, but it'll allow me to plot the maneuver, and I can just show you what I mean. And I can also show you the space station for those of you who are new on the channel. Yeah, so this is the ugly-ish space station that we have here. The Aurora, it's not really finished, but I decided that we're gonna finish it once we like actually start our mission to Eve, because the mission to Eve still will take like a really long time, and while we're doing that, we might as well like finish some of the stuff that we can do locally here on Kerbin. So if I just create like some random-ish maneuver, I'm not gonna like accurately plan it, I just want to show you. So if I set Eve for an intercept, like I could set it as targets, and I could just try to kind of eyeball a maneuver-ish, like something along the lines. This is going to be a very crude maneuver, but it'll kind of do the job just to demonstrate what I mean. So yeah, we could, for example, right now, fire off with this maneuver. The problem is that you can notice that we're going to be going quite close to the sun, actually. And even though our delta V from Kerbin is just like 2.2 kilometers per second, which is not a lot, if you do it optimally, you can have only 1,000 meters per second. So we already see that to just initialize this maneuver, we already have to pay like double the price. But the problem is that we're gonna be slamming into Eve at 7 kilometers per second, which is quite a lot, and this brings a bunch of challenges. So first of all, how are you going to aerobrake. So, like, if you try to do that, if you try to complete this maneuver with just chemical propellants, you'd need to launch, like, an entire rocket there to execute 7 kilometers per second of delta V. Now, some of that delta V is actually, some of that speed we still need to, like, actually orbit Eve, but most of that is just speed that we don't really need and that we don't really want. And so, for the most part, you have to shed off about 3 to 4 kilometers of delta V, which is hard. It's a lot of delta V. But the problem is, like, okay, we can aerobrake, right? But then there's this delay. There's like 70 seconds of delay. And so you have to line up the aerobraking just right so that you don't overshoot, because then you won't have enough fuel to actually correct for the perfect orbit. And you also need to make sure that you won't burn the hell in atmosphere, because again, Eve has a very dense atmosphere, and you gotta be slamming into that dense atmosphere like a crazy maniac, which just does not sound very smart. Moreover, there are stability issues that I ran in place when trying to design this probe. However, I did come with what I think is a pretty good solution. Let me just show you right here. I didn't have time to get most of this done. Okay, let me just remove the Z here that I'm using to find it. Okay, 1 second, just minor inconveniences. Yeah, so here's the probe that I've designed. You can notice it has this like big fat heat shield at the front that we're going to be using for the actual aerobraking. But there's a problem with that. So the center of mass for this vehicle is somewhere about here. Like, it's doesn't really matter where precisely, it's just that it's significantly behind the actual heat shield. And if it just so happens that through a little bit of imprecision, which is always going to be there, the spacecraft tilts ever so slightly. So what's going to happen now is that the heat shield will be trying to slow us down, and it'll be exerting a force. But this force will now be off-center. It'll actually try to push us even more into the same direction. And that's bad, because the space probe that we have, it'll just get rotated around. So how do you counter that? Well, normally, you could just slam a bunch of these... I have a couple of these gyroscopes there, but in my testing, I've noticed that the problem is that our center of mass is so far behind the heat shield that just no matter how many gyroscopes I add, it just doesn't really improve the situation. Moreover, the more I try to add them, the more it extends the center of mass away from the heat shield. And in my testing, I found out that it's actually just impossible. And the reason why it is impossible is because we are going to be aerobraking so hard. Because we need to aerobrake, not just like, you know, we need to shed off like a few 100 meters per second. You could do that. That's not a problem. The problem starts to arise when you actually want to shed off like several kilometers per second worth of velocity. That's when you really run into this problem, because at some point the friction of air will generate so much stopping force that you're gonna be pulling like 15 Gs. And I mean it, like actually 15 Gs. So like humans could probably not survive that at all. They probably would just die due to G overloads, which is kind of bad. But this is a probe. It can survive the G-forces, it's just that it gets flipped. So what do? Aha, well, normally when your rocket, when it's like flying in atmosphere, if it just topples over, you add stabilizers at the back. But the problem here is that our rocket is going hypersonic. Moreover, it's like going so hard that the air friction will burn off absolutely any part that we have except for heat shields. And so I came up with this weird little design where I have these alligators here. I mean, can I please select them? I guess not. Okay, yeah, so I have these alligator hinges. And what I can do is, once I actually get close to it, I can just put them like this. And now, if the spacecraft were to tilt, then the heat shield that is on the opposite side, it'll have more drag force than the one that is like on the side that we're tilting into. And that force difference, because it's actually behind our center of mass, will correct us. And this means that the spacecraft, instead of having active stability, so when I'm using gyroscopes or RCS to actually stay balanced, it has passive stability, which means that I can just shut everything down and it'll be still fine. And so that's the solution that I took, and because we're using these alligator hinges, I can actually fold these heat shields like this, which also means that the whole profile of this probe is actually quite small. It's like not really big. At first I was just trying to slap a bunch of these grinder segments. I was just putting them like on the sides like this, and then just attaching heat shields to them, which kind of works, but then the problem is, like, when you're trying to launch this, it's just way too big. And also, for some reason, the grinder segments themselves were overheating, which doesn't happen with alligator hinges for KSP mechanics reasons. No one knows. And so that's the spacecraft that we're going to be launching today. And I think we actually can get on with the whole launch. So the rocket itself is not really remarkable, with the only exception that we actually need to spend a little bit of science, because we need to buy a larger heat shield. We don't actually have it. Thankfully, I did stock up on some science. Okay. Awkward silence while I'm waiting for... Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we're gonna have to research this landing, and that also forces us to research some aviation perks. But while we're gonna be waiting for the space probe to like actually arrive to Eve, because it's still gonna take like 150 days or something, Kerbal days, which are not equal to our normal days, but still. In real world days, I think it's gonna be like 50-ish days. And that means we're gonna have quite a lot of time for us to play with aircrafts and to do a bunch of stuff that we need to do on Kerbin, but we can do that while we're waiting for the probe to like actually arrive. And with that out of the way, I think we can just launch it. Okay, what parts we don't have? We don't have the like alligator hinges, and we probably don't have this adapter right here. Yeah, so we've got the alligator hinges. We also have the heat shields themselves, the big fat heat shield. By the way, this one uses 1.8 meter. You could do this with a 2.5, but I thought that I don't want the extra mass. And while this does reduce the angle that we have to keep, so if there's like just a couple of degrees of error, the entire probe will burn off into oblivion. But in my testing, I found out that it actually works fairly alright. Okay, so we also need a bunch of these mimified propellant tanks, and we also need a bunch of our big fat antennas that we're going to be using for interplanetary communication. Alright, so that is kind of it. So let's launch it. And some of you might actually be... oh, we also need a service bay. Sorry. And some of you might actually be asking the question, if you've tried to do like a similar mission yourself, one of the problems is that the antennas get burned off. So you need to close them. But the question is, who's gonna be opening them back again? And for that, we have Kerbalism, which is another mod that does add a lot of pain, but it does add a little bit of merit to it, because Kerbalism has these automation keybinds. Well, they're not keybinds, they're like action groups, sort of. So basically, when some event happens, for example, you are in sunlight, you are in shadow, you've lost connection, you have regained connection. When stuff like that happens, what you can do is you can execute some action. And for us, we are going to be executing an action. So if we happen to find ourselves in atmosphere, we're gonna close all the antennas and we're gonna close all of the solar panels. I will try to close them prior so that they don't get burned off, but just in case. And then once we're actually clear out of atmosphere and we're in space, we can fold them back again and regain connection, which is kind of nice and not something that you can do in stock KSP for reasons, because it's actually kind of nice to have even in normal KSP. And also one of the other things that we have researched in the previous episodes is finally we have MagJab, which means that we can start launching rockets automatically. Let me just go ahead and check that our send path is okay-ish. Yeah, I think it's going to be a rather shallow launch at about 30 degrees. If you don't know what this means, I will be making a video about how to interface with MagJab, or you can just continue watching the series and find out for yourself. Okay, I'm going to be turning auto stage off for the simple reason that we're playing with Kerbalism, which means there's like a small chance that some of the boosters or engines might not start and even explode on start, which means that I want to first start off all of the engines, make sure they're running, and then I'm gonna stage the clamps. But with that out of the way, I think we can engage the autopilot and just go for it. Hi there in chat. I think we're kind of good to go. My frame rate is very low for reasons, but okay. Let's start here. Okay, and here it goes. It should complete the entire launch automatically. What I will do is I'll enable auto staging right here for it to do that on its own. And yeah, okay. I'm experiencing a little bit of frame time issues here. It doesn't seem to affect the stream all too much, but if the quality deteriorates significantly, please tell me so. But in general, yeah, I don't have a very powerful PC. Okay, maybe I can just try to... can I drop some of the settings? Maybe, question mark. Maybe that'll help a little. Okay, that helped a little, but it's still kind of trash, but, you know, whatever. It should get better once the spacecraft is a little smaller. Alright, and yeah, I mean, I can just turn off everything and just enjoy the view, kind of, because it'll do the entire ascent automatically. Some people, I've heard someone say to me that using MagJab is kind of cheating. I don't think so, because I've already proven in this series that I can launch pretty much any rocket manually. The problem is that it just gets repetitive. I don't like having to do the same thing over and over and over again. It just gets repetitive, and there's like no real learning going on. Whereas with once you're using MagJab, you can completely automate launches. Now KSP doesn't really have the ability to support like multiple vehicle simulations at the same time, but KSA, which is a new game that's maybe will come to us, maybe not, I hope so. But they promise that you should have multiple vehicle simulations at the same time, which also means that you could theoretically completely automate some of the launches. So for example, you could have MagJab just launch a spacecraft into orbit and dock it to one of your space station automatically every, I don't know, once a year, for example. And it'll refuel your space station, it'll give you a bunch of resources, Because again, Kerbalism, we're playing with Kerbalism, we have food, we have water, we have oxygen, we have a bunch of these resources. And it could theoretically do all of that automatically without you having to go through that on your own. But even in KSP, you still have to do those like refueling, resupply missions. What you can do is you can at least partially automate them, so you don't actually have to like play through them. You can just set a bunch of values into MechJap and it'll just do that for you, which is nice. Okay, someone in chat is saying that they only use execute maneuvers, you set manually. That's also fine. You can see I have maneuver planner. I do most of the maneuver planning myself. I do some of maneuver planning using MechJap, but I think the Ascent guidance is one feature that is the nicest to have, to be completely honest. It's probably one of the most important features, because through KSP, I've launched, like, through playing KSP, I've launched, like, thousands of rockets, and I think I got kind of bored of doing the same thing over and over again. Let me manually stage the fairing here. Look at float away nicely here, and yeah, that should kind of be it. We can actually time warp here, I think. Although the frame rate is like, it does not like me very much. So probably I won't be time warping all that much, but yeah. I don't actually know. It was kind of fine when I was streaming the series previously. Don't know why it's bad. Hey, KSA mentioned, can't wait for KSA. I hope development continues to go well. I hope so myself, because, well, I do want a lot of the stuff that they promise for KSA. But honestly, I've made a video about KSA already, and it was titled something like, I don't know, the ultimate KSP enemy, because I genuinely think that the way they are developing, they're basically guaranteed success. Because the biggest problem about KSP is not actually like the graphics and all. I mean, the base KSP has graphics like really, really old graphics. I'm not gonna say anything bad about them. They're okay, but they're like really, really old. You have to admit that. And still everyone continues playing it to this very day. I mean, sure, I'm playing with like visual mods and stuff, but even the base KSP, it looks fine. That's not the problem with it. The problem is having all of these orbital and physics and mechanics in place, because physics simulation for games like KSP, when you have to like make your own vehicle, are stupendously important, and it's very important to get them right. And KSP does a lot of mistakes. It has a lot of mistakes in the way that it approaches the physics simulation in the first place, which KSA doesn't have. I mean, they've already proven to us in their demos that they are taking a much more reasonable approach. For example, they're using a lot of multi-threaded physics engines. I think they're, I don't remember how it's called. No, I can't remember it right now, but I've made the video about it. You can watch why I think the KSA will actually succeed over KSP quite easily. Yeah. Okay. Alright, I think we're kind of good to go here. We could, I think we just plot the maneuver to even initialize it. Okay, let's make our maneuver. And so the way you do the maneuver in general is you just put a rough amount of delta V that you think you will need, and that just kind of puts you on a relatively reasonable course to where you want to go. What you have to do then is you have to go in map view, you have to go into this graphical maneuver editor, you have to set an appropriate scale, and then first thing you have to do is you have to use these two buttons. I'm just trying to tell that to anyone who doesn't really know what's going on. You have to use these two buttons to... what they do is they move the maneuver node about. So Look at that. If I press them, I can move the maneuver nodes on the orbit, so it's basically earlier/later. And what I want to do is for a given delta V that I'm already gonna be inputting, I want to find the optimal execution time. And look at that. I think this is like the most optimal execution time, because I could make the same maneuver at almost every time that I want. Like, the placement of orbit doesn't matter all that much. But it still allows me to fine-tune it so that it's most optimal. Once you've got that, you can actually go ahead and get most of the precision by just dragging these arrows. And once you're like actually almost near the intercept, you can just decrease scale and kind of press them individually to actually get an intercept. Now, because we don't really have a very high thrust-to-weight ratio, our thrust-to-weight ratio here is actually just kind of trash. It's around 1, which is not too bad, but it's just that we have to make 2,000 meters per second of delta V. The burn time is going to be 3 minutes. And that's the reason why I'm not trying to like really align the maneuver very accurately. It's still something that you could do, and it's nice, I guess, at least roughly, but the problem is that the precision at which we're going to be executing the maneuver node, even though we're using MagChap, is going to be trash, so we're going to have to make a corrective burn once we get closer to the orbit anyway. So I'm not gonna align it all that much, because, like I said, the precision is gonna be trash anyway. So I'm just gonna put ourselves just straight into the center of Eve. And that should be kind of it. Let's just press... Oh, wait. So what I have to do is I have to fold out my heat shields. I have to fold out all of my solar panels, and I have to fold out all of my antennas. And while we are here, before I forgot, why don't we set the actual antennas to deploy? So once we get to space, I want my antennas to, turn on. Basically, all of my primary antennas, I want that stuff to be turned on, and I can't find the last one for reasons. Okay, and also all of the solar panels, please be turned on once we get into space. Thank you very much. And we'll do the same thing for atmosphere, just not now, because I don't want to bore you. I'll do that between the episodes or something like that. Alright, let's press execute next node. And again, MagChap will execute the maneuver node for me, because it's just nice to have. What I do recommend is setting enough lead time, so that when you're time warping, it won't like overshoot over the nodes. You can also drag the node as well for more precision. Wrong, because these buttons will actually give you a lot more precision than when dragging. That's one. And two, they allow you to look at where you're going while dragging the node that is like somewhere really far away. That's the advantage. Okay, let's press auto warp here. Have MagChap execute the node. Because KSP physics, they'll actually have to realign halfway. Because bugs in KSP. By the way, another thing that took me forever is that in early versions of the space probe for... I don't know why. I honestly don't. But I think some of the parts were kind of... There was like a little bit of part clipping going on. Not enough to be visual. But once I would get into orbit around Kerbal, which is the sun, the spacecraft would just start spinning ever so slightly. But then it would just kind of ramp up. And that kind of screwed me over several times in my testing. And I just could not correct it. I don't know why it was happening. Probably like a little bit of part clipping. Basically, I had to redesign the probe from scratch to have a bit more space between all of the elements. You can also notice that we have like a weird solar panel configuration here. It's mostly what I like to call the slap as many as you can, because these antennas actually eat so much electric power that it's not going to be a problem once we get to Eve, because we're a lot closer to the sun, but while we're going to be orbiting Kerbin, and while we're going to be like in our transit towards Eve, I want to have as many solar panels as I possibly can strap on this vessel, just to kind of take the YOLO approach of just slamming as many as I possibly can, just hoping that that'll be enough. Okay, and with that out of the way, let's finish our maneuver. Again, I'm not going to be time warping because of weird frame time issues that I'm having, so you can ask me questions in the meantime while we're waiting for the node to execute. By the way, don't forget to join the Discord. We have a Discord. It's nice. People submit a lot of stuff there. Actually have quite a few people there recently. Oh, so I'm sorry. It's just that I have the chat for the horizontal video as my primary one, and so one of the guys in the vertical stream said frame rate thing might be the ocean graphics, kind of goes the same way on my end, usually fixes out of planet. Yes, it could be, but I think it's just that I have, in general, I'm playing on a laptop and the GPU doesn't like it very much when I'm starting to A, stream, B, record, C, play the game at quite decent graphic settings because I want you to have a nice picture, and so it kind of dies. Not gonna lie, unrelated, banger design for the probe ship thing. Thank you very much. I actually take pride in this one. I genuinely do, because I think it's kind of neat. I've really enjoyed designing these arms. Oh, stage it manually. Okay, so yeah, the problem that I was having was it just flipping over, so I had to like design this weird alligator thing here for it to fold out these heat shields. Actually, speaking of that, one of the things that I kind of don't ever do on this channel is design probes to look good. I genuinely never do. However, a lot of people have been telling me that my designs are actually kind of interesting. And to that, I can say that try to play with a bunch of limiting mods like Kerbalism, like Remote Tech, because these mods, they're gonna give you a lot of challenges that you don't really have in base case B. And yeah, they make the game slightly harder, but not that much harder. Like, it doesn't really change the core of the game. What it changes is that you have resources, you need like sometimes more electricity, sometimes you need to design the probes in a way to survive an engine malfunction, for example, because there's always like a small chance that some of the engines might fail. And while you're doing all of that, you will inevitably create an interesting design, just because all of these small decisions will make the vessel a lot more interesting just by itself. So you don't really have to do much in terms of like making the design interesting, because it'll be, even though you are following the form follows function principles, you still will have quite interesting designs just like that. Okay, yeah, I'm getting 2 compliments at the same time for this vehicle design, which I'm really proud of. I mean, thank you guys. I'm, like, really, it means a lot because I've spent so much time designing it. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna wait. I think we're gonna time warp till we exit out of Kerbin. That's gonna be just 1 day, which is not too much. And then I'm gonna create another maneuver. I'll fine-tune our approach to Eve, And that will be kind of it for this probe. Also, let's rename it while we're not too far away. Okay, open the service bay. We've got the service bay here. We've got a bunch of, okay, let me point the camera. Thank you very much. So we've got a bunch of these octos here. The reason I have more than one is because A, part failure, but B, more importantly, they just carry different experiments on them. Alright, and what I want to do is I want to configure vessel naming. Eve relay, I'm just gonna press, I'm just gonna rename it to something funny. And for all of my viewers who speak Russian, you're gonna laugh yourself out. Because the probes, I'm gonna be launching 2 probes to Eve to basically have 100% coverage almost. And they're gonna be named Lupa and Pupa. So this is gonna be Pupa. And the other one's gonna be Lupa. And let's mark them as relays. For my English-speaking community, you're probably like, what? For my Russian-speaking community, they probably laughed the hell out of themselves. It's a joke. Alright, let's continue with the whole time warp thing. Hopefully we're not gonna slam into Mun. Thank you very much. Okay. If you really want, I could try to explain the joke, but it's a language thing. Okay, so now we're like in global orbits, and we could try to fine-tune our orbit while our signal delay is like less than 1 second for now. Let me just create another one maneuver somewhere here. And now what I can do is, again, I'm gonna switch to Eve. And I want to put it into a polar orbit. So let's try doing that. Actually, doesn't matter which polar orbit in terms of like whether it goes one way or the other. The only thing that matters is that it is a polar orbit of some sorts, and while we're at it, we might as well just really lower our periapsis to roughly atmosphere level-ish. Yeah, something like that. That looks reasonably fine. Maybe like a little bit of a correction here, but it doesn't really matter all too much. Okay, let's press execute node, although I'll set the thrust limit a little bit. I can already feel the signal delay, by the way. It's only 300 milliseconds, but I can still like feel when I'm pressing it, and it's like not instant, and you're like, hmm? Okay, let's execute the node. Probe missions, my favorite kind of missions too. Yeah, I mean, they're kind of interesting. By the way, another reason why I'm setting a polar orbit is because we have a bunch of experiments that can only be run on polar orbits. Actually, no, scratch that. They can be ran on non-polar orbits. It's just that polar orbits are nice because eventually you go through absolutely every single biome. That's the reason why I'm setting polar orbit. And we're gonna have 2 satellites. Each one of them will be at like a highly elliptical orbit. I think that's the correct name for it. So it'll just fly through some of the biomes at like lower altitude, some of the biomes at high altitude, something like that. Or I might actually put one into low orbits and the other one into high orbit. I'll see whichever makes more sense once we actually get there, because for now it's like doesn't really matter all that much. Okay, so yeah, this is gonna be our Pupa, and the other one's gonna be Lupa and Pupa. Okay, yeah, again, some people are laughing their hell out of themselves, some are just like being weirded out, but I don't care. Alright, that was one probe, and it took us an entire day to launch. Okay, I mean, they're good names. I mean, they sound funny by themselves. Lupa and Pupa. Okay, that was one probe. Let's launch the other one. They're gonna be coming at a little bit of a delay after each other. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I'm not a native English speaker. I was born in the US, but I wasn't really raised in the US, so I speak Russian better than I do English, although I do take pride in that my English is a lot better than most of the Russians. So, there's that. I don't know why the hell I went to R&D. Okay, let's launch the other probe. Should be good enough. I love how for completely unknown reasons, this stream is performing really, really well for my streams. We've got so many people here, which is surprising because I haven't been streaming for quite some time. I guess it's Saturday or something. Yeah, let's launch pretty much the same thing. And because it's gonna be exact same thing, I'm really glad I have MechJap to execute all of these maneuvers by themselves. Born and raised in US here. Yeah, I mean, a lot of my viewers are native US guys because, well, I mean, that's where you find most of the English-speaking community. Okay, engage autopilot. Start the engines. Release the clamps. Oh, I forgot to disable auto stage. Whoopsie daisy. That could have been fatal, but, you know. Well, worst case scenario, since this is a probe, we're just gonna have to pay a bunch of money. It's not gonna be completely fatal, but still, that was uncomfortable. Okay, wow. Guys are completely ignoring me. It's just have a conversation of their own. I'm just chilling here. Alright, just finished some stealth jet thingy in my own KSP run. Stealth jet thingy? You mean like... I'm just trying to think, like, are you talking about BSD Armory, or are you just, in general, made a design that you think is stealthy? It looks stealthy-ish. Or is, like, have you actually checked that it's stealthy? Or you just did it, like, angular-ish, and, like, this looks stealthy enough? Oh, look at that! We've got... This is Sunset in orbit. Yeah, I think this is Sunset. We have a little bit of a joke here that in the earlier missions there were a lot of sunsets and sunrises because I was doing these weird jumps to collect science, just to jump into stratosphere and then bump down. And there was this local joke that, oh, look at that, it's sunset in orbit and it's over because it like lasted for a few seconds or something. Someone say BD Armory. Yes, I did. It's a nice little mod, although I haven't learned all that much of it, and it worked like hell for me, but I mean, I actually kind of hope that with KSA and their whole like multiple physics simulations at the same time with multi-threaded, well actually they don't just have multi-threaded physics engine, they have multiple instances of physics engine. So one vehicle is simulated by one physics engine, the other is simulated by other physics engines as long as they're far enough away from each other. And that could actually be kind of interesting for people who actually want to have a little bit of combat in a KSP-like environment, because I would like to make a couple of movies of my own, because I love space combat. Hello, The Expanse fans. Love y'all. Okay, let me stage the fairing here. Okay, I'm gonna allow Magjab to time warp on its own. Hopefully it's not gonna obliterate anything. I'm sure KSA will perform nicely, because the look at that. KSP2, even though they were doing everything wrong, they still performed incredibly well in terms of like monetary and just general success metrics. KSA will do better because they actually will have a working game. I'm very sure of that. Yeah. Some people told me under the comments of my video about KSA that I did, like it's a, you know, KSP killer and everything. They told me that they have some beef with the actual producer of the game and that they think he might ruin the idea or something. Not entirely sure, but actually that video is the most disliked video on my entire channel, so take of that what you will. There's like a lot of comments of people like, yay, KSA is gonna be so fun and great and exciting, and then there's like a bunch of dislikes out of nowhere. I think it's like, you can't really see that on YouTube by default, but I think it's like 75% likes, 25% dislikes. It's like, okay. Bunch of mad people. Okay, and we are officially in orbit, so we can just plan the maneuver right away. Okay, let's make a maneuver here. I remember the rough values for the Delta V's, so I'm just gonna plug them in here by default, and hopefully that'll allow us to plot the maneuver quick, because we don't want to spend way too much time. It's funny, by the way, that in some cases there's a small chance that we actually gonna arrive with the probe that we launched later. It'll arrive first, which is why I had like this whole day of delay between the launches, so that hopefully that won't happen and they're gonna arrive at different times. Again, I'm just hoping. Alright, let's line it up ish like that. Okay, something like that. Yeah, that looks good enough. Okay, we've got an intercept going. Let me just focus on Eve. Line it up a little bit. Thank you for closing the window for the 50th time. I really appreciate it. Okay. Higher precision. Okay, yeah, we're gonna slam straight into Eve. That looks good enough. Alright, let's execute our maneuver. Thank you, Ascend Guidance. You can go now. Execute next node. Hopefully it'll do everything. Okay. Awkward silence moment. But you know, there's gonna be a lot of these when we're doing a bunch of these similar maneuvers. Actually, another vehicle that I wanted to launch to Eve will be a bunch of probes that will just go into the atmosphere, land on surface of Eve, and explore different biomes. And I want to have like this big mothership type of vessel that will actually make its way all the way into low orbit of Eve, and there it will kind of pop them one at a time to land in different biomes or something like that. And I actually think that I'm gonna be designing it based on the on this design, because I really like it. And actually, if we swap this like big fuel tank here for a bunch of like these service bay, we could potentially store a lot of these like small probes in them that will just, they won't really even have engines. They will have just a little bit of RCS that'll just boop them out of orbit. They're gonna fall, and they're gonna collect a lot of science while they're descending, and then some more science once they actually get to surface, and then die. Because that's what Venus probes did, or more accurately, Venera probes from the Soviets, when they launched those probes that went to Venus. That's what they did. They just descended in atmosphere and then died once they got on the surface, like minutes later, because it's not a very fun environment to be in. Now all I can think of is the probes entering Eve Helldiver style out of dropships. Yes! That's what we're gonna be doing. Yeah, because we can actually try to explicitly theme it like Helldiver's theme, maybe. I know for a fact that I have that the error breaking of these satellites is gonna be very sus, and I'm actually gonna be streaming it because I've got a lot of penetration jokes, you know, like that kind of stuff. I'll try to see how people will react to that type of code reptile, because I'm still kind of trying to find my style in terms of how like I behave on these streams, like how I talk about them. Yeah, hopefully it's gonna be funny. I actually really wanted to make like a short compilation, because a lot of these missions that I've been doing for now, they're not really super exciting. They're basically go to Minmus, land, collect science, go back. Go to Mon, collect science, go back. Launch a space station A, launch a space station B. Go rescue that guy, go rescue this guy. There's not like a lot of cinematic material that you can actually pull out of them. I hope with this mission I can actually make a little bit of recap. I think I actually have the music for it. Although I'm not sure. I'm thinking between. Okay. I'm sorry. Why does it not finish the maneuver? Thank you. Can you please? Okay. For some reason, MechJeb decided to just die. We lost connection, because of course we did. Somehow. Okay. Why is the connection dead? Oh, that's right, because I don't have a very powerful antenna in the probes, because I forgot to pull the good antenna there. Whoopsie daisy. Okay. Damn it. Polar Explorer 3, go to vessel. Hopefully I can point one of the big fat antennas on that thing towards one of the satellites, and maybe that'll be enough to reroute the signal or something. Okay, so we've got these two big chunky antennas. Let's point one of them at Pupa. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Excuse you? Why can't I see it? It should be in Sun's orbit. And yet I don't see it for reasons. Huh? Okay, let's point one at Eve Relay. Maybe that'll give it signal. Okay, so this one's pointed at Eve Relay, and this one is pointed at Mission Control. We could probably just target the active vessel or something with it. I don't know. Okay, weird stuff is happening. Let's go to Eve Relay. No, dog. This is something that's not okay. That's weird. Okay, so for some reason we lost connection of this probe when we're going at like a completely wrong direction. Well, I mean, it's not like completely wrong, but still, we don't really have a working connection right now, which is a little annoying. Hopefully we will... Okay, look at that. We got a connection back working again. So we could probably plan another maneuver here and finish maneuvering. Annoying. That's what I will... Oh, by the way, don't forget to remind me to set the automatic antenna deployment, that kind of thing, once we actually get to Eve. Just remind me to check that, because I don't have it set for this probe specifically. Okay, we're gonna have to execute a bit more of a maneuver. Unfortunately, it's not gonna be as efficient, but, you know, that's the price you have to pay for being a dumbass who forgot to put the antenna on your spacecraft, and your Bumblebee satellites don't actually have that powerful of antennas. Okay, I'm going to put it like... I'm just trying to think how I want to put these. Yeah, I think we're gonna go one... The previous one went over the South Pole, this one's gonna go over the North Pole, and I think it's gonna be good enough. Something like that, maybe? Yes, no, maybe. Can you please work? Thank you. Okay, yeah, that looks reasonably accurate. Look at that. Precision. Okay, we can correct it once we get closer to Eve, if we feel the need. Maybe just a little higher. Thank you. Okay, that looks good enough. Execute next node. We have these super powerful antennas here, but they don't... Even though they have like 60 degrees of angle on them, they were pointed straight at Kerbin, which is why the other satellites couldn't really communicate with them. Okay, that was weird. I'm sorry for that, whatever that was. I really did not quite understand what was going on, but thankfully we do have a little bit of spare fuel. Another problem with these launches is that the amount of Delta V that I have planned for these is actually not enough in a way, because like I wanted for the previous stage to complete all of our transfer to Eve, but now I have to use the Pug engine to just initialize our transfer to Eve, because I put these heat shields yesterday and I didn't really... Like, I did the testing that it enters the atmosphere fine and it doesn't burn and like all that stuff, but I haven't really tested how much spare Delta V do we need. Because the problem with Eve's atmosphere is that because it's so dense, if you go just like 100 meters lower, you will completely overshoot, or rather, you will undershoot and just stop in your tracks and just go to the bottom of the atmosphere, sort of like in a liquid, almost. And if you go slightly higher, you will overshoot, and then you're gonna be going way too fast to actually slow down with the engine. There's like a very, very fine threading that we're gonna have to do, which is another reason why I'm setting 2 satellites right now. The hope is that theoretically, if one of them fails, we're gonna still have the other one functioning, and we can send a replacement, or we could start sending other missions without having to worry all that much. Okay, let's configure vessel naming. This one's gonna be Lupa. Relay. Okay, like that. Okay, so now we have the Lupa and Pupa satellites. Let's configure the automation here. Okay, so I want to turn these antennas on once we're in space. Thank you very much. Which one of these antennas is the one I'm looking for? This one, okay. The problem is that for some reason, this display for Kerbalism, it doesn't actually show what antenna it is precisely. Like, it highlights when you hover over it, but the hover functionality is kind of trash, and it doesn't like name them, so it's hard, sometimes really hard to find the specific antenna that you're looking for. You've got like a whole bunch of them, which is really annoying. I might actually patch that, make like a custom version where it'll display the name forcefully, specifically for antennas, because for solar panels it's not that big of an issue. Normally you just kind of have either all on or all off, but with antennas it's a lot more pronounced, this issue. Alright, so that's gonna be kind of it. We've got Lupa and Pupa. Let us go back to the Polar Explorer, and hopefully we can get the antennas to point at those two satellites precisely, instead of them being pointed at nothing or something. I don't really know what was going on. I couldn't quite select the actual vessels that I wanted. Okay, this one is targeting Lupa, and this one should be targeting Pupa, except it's like not visible on the menu for reasons. I have no idea why. Maybe, okay, you know what? We can point one of these to just Eve or something. It's not that big of an issue, it's just more so annoying. Hopefully, maybe like a reload. Let me just save the game here and try to reload. Maybe that'll help. Sometimes it does. You know, the classic, have you tried restarting it? Okay, alright. Let's check it out. So, no, it did not help. God damn it. Okay, you know what? I don't like it. I don't... Сука, блядь. Okay, I'm angry. I'm very angry. It did not work, but you know, we'll figure something out. Okay. Another thing that why I'm not really too worried about it is because while the Polar Explorer is a little bit off center, it's like orbiting around Minmus, it's still, like, it doesn't really provide that much more coverage compared to the Mission Control Center. I mean, the problem with Mission Control is that if it's, like, on the other side of the planet, then you don't really have communication, and that's why one of the Polar Explorers might actually relay the connection fairly consistently. But the problem is that in my testing, I've found out that because we launched right now, we are going to reach Eve when Eve is going to be precisely on the other sides of the sun. And so we won't really have a connection anyway, which is why I want to shove a bunch of deep space probe thingies that will just provide a connection. They're gonna go into polar orbits around Sun. Well, not really polar, because going into polar orbits around Sun just takes way too much delta V. They will just in general be on like a slightly inclined orbits, so that they will still relay the connection even if it just so happens that Eve is precisely on the other side of the Sun, which is going to be the case. Which is stupendously annoying. But we can actually launch those slightly later. What I do want to do right now is actually launch the Aurora arms. So, in case you haven't watched the previous series, we have this big fat space station in Kerbal orbit, which we are going to be using to refuel. And the space station itself, it has the Aurora itself, which is like this core, which has a lab, it has a bunch of habitation modules, all the good stuff. What it doesn't have is a lot of solar panels, and it also doesn't have a lot of resources. And for that reason, we have these like Aurora arms, which are these big, fat, chunky arms that are just gonna attach to the sides of it, and will give it a bunch of solar panels and a shit ton of resources, so that we don't ever have to worry about it ever again, something like that. Dumb ideas, but pros orbiting the sun, Dyson sphere style for universal connection. I mean, yeah, that would kind of work, but have I told you that we're like doing how does it called? We're not doing like sandbox style, we're doing career. That's right. I forgot the word for reasons. And we don't have enough money. We need more money, and I don't want to launch 1,000 satellites because that's just way too expensive. What I do want is to probably launch these Aurora arms, except I already have an issue that I see, is that we don't have enough arms around them. You'll see why. Okay. Oh, look at that! We're overweight. Okay, I see why I didn't add them. Because it's like, oh my god, we have a limit of 140 tons, and it's just 4 kilograms lighter than our launch limit. Precision. Okay. Save and continue. Okay. Yeah, let's launch this bad boy. Except that I want to time the launch so that it's kind of closer to the Aurora, because, well, we're going to it anyway. The oxygen. I could only dream I got to do a resupply mission soon for my station because of oxygen. Yeah. This mission should kind of provide all of the oxygen that we could ever need. I mean, it's not that big of an issue, like, around Kerbin, because you can send a resupply mission pretty much instantaneously. It's a lot harder to do when you have to launch resupply missions to other planets. And look at that, we're already in perfect position to launch our arms. Although it's going to be a nighttime launch, because of course it will be. For some reason, all of our launches tend to be during nighttime. Which is annoying, but it is what it is. Alright, let's launch this bad boy. Hopefully it's not too much sophisticated of a launch. Although we have incorrect staging for some reason. What is the... Oh, no, it's correct. I'm sorry, I'm just dumb. Never mind. Why do I always try to screw something up? Our thrust to weight ratio is not very high though, so we're probably gonna have to take a higher ascent profile. If you don't know what an ascent profile is basically the curvature of your trajectory towards orbit. So you could take an extremely shallow ascent profile where you basically just boop up a little bit and then you turn like to the side and just YOLO into oblivion, which works for example, Minmus really well. Or you could take like a very steep ascent profile where we basically go like to space, and then you turn, and then you burn prograde. All in between are reasonable for some reasons. Just depends on how thick the atmosphere is and what's your thrust to weight ratio. Alright, let's deselect auto warp, let's set proper roll, let's enable corrective steering, let's disable auto stage, let's set proper orbit altitude, let's select proper ascent path. I want to start at 2 kilometers or 100 meters per second. I want to go to 75 kilometers. I want to go at about 40% turn shape, which is your ascent profile, which seems to be working really well for most vehicles. It's usually about between 40 and 30 depending on your thrust to weight ratio. And I also want to select the Aurora as a target. I want to launch to rendezvous. I want to launch to rendezvous at about 35 degrees, I think. And look at that. It's gonna time the launch so that the Aurora is about 35 degrees behind us, and it's better. It's always better to launch when something is slightly more behind you, because we're going into low orbits, and that means if you want to intercept the space station quickly, you can always take a wider orbit, but you can not always take a significantly lower orbit. Okay, let's engage the autopilot. Hopefully I'm not... I have this, like, weird feeling that I'm forgetting something. Oh, right, limit AOA to 15 degrees. That was what I was forgetting. No, the feeling's still there. Still feels like I'm forgetting something. Damn it. Okay, so it'll start the boosters by itself, but then I'm gonna have to make sure that everything works, and then I'm gonna stage the clamps myself. Okay, all boosters ignited successfully. We are go. We can re-enable auto staging, and hopefully, if I remember correctly, 40 degrees, or rather 40% for the ascent profile is the correct number, and it'll do everything by itself, although for some reason it's wiggling a lot, which is not very good. Let me auto strut the boosters here to route part or something. It's still wiggling. I don't like that. Let me put slow-mo here. I'm sorry guys, but I'm gonna go to half time warp because it's wiggling because of the frame time issues. So yeah. Let me read some of the chat messages. Yeah, half the time I'm more used to doing sandbox because you're too lazy to beat career. I perfectly understand you, because for me the biggest problem is that you usually set the career limitations to be not hard enough, because otherwise the beginning is way too tedious, and if you set them hard enough, then you just, in the beginning you have to do a bunch of very, very, very dumb launches, and once you're already familiar with KSP, they're kind of annoying to do, which is why, like, the beginning of this series was stupendously boring, me just doing a bunch of extremely simple launches. There were a few funny moments. Some of you might remember the accidental staging in orbit and Jep having to jetpack a 3-ton vehicle back from orbit, which was a little funny. I even made a short video about it, but other than that, it was stupendously boring. Okay, it should stage the boosters automatically right now. Hopefully it'll all work correctly. Okay, I think we can disable time warp here because we're closer to space, and I also don't want to wait forever for this launch to complete. But yeah, usually sandbox is kind of fun in that you can start going to other planets and such right away. What I like about career is that it kind of forces you to have more simple launches at first, which is kind of boring if you already know KSP and you're getting through that, you know, like, super stupid stage when you just have to get to orbit the first time, and then you have to, like, fly by Mun. It's, like, really boring. But then again, it still forces you to come up with interesting solutions once you start going to Eve, for example. Because if I had all of my engines right now, I would not have even bothered with trying to aerobrake in Eve orbit. I would have just, I don't know, maybe had some super stupidly high Delta V vehicle that would have just stopped around Eve with its engines, and I would never come up with such an interesting design. And that's something that I've seen with many vehicle designs. sometimes I'm forced to create more interesting vehicles because I don't really have the technology to progress otherwise. And at some point you still get all of those technologies, at some point you still have all of that, but at that point you also have much more complex missions when you're going to like super long destination planets and everything. Okay, hopefully the launch will be completed without mini events. And look at that, we're gonna almost intersect it first orbit. Probably not quite, but I mean, with the whole frame time. I just realized when we're gonna be docking to the space station, the frame rate is probably gonna be absolutely trash. It's probably gonna be horrible. That's gonna be scary. Remember to quick save a lot because it might explode. I think I have Kerbal joint reinforcement. Oh, I don't have it on for reasons unknown to me. Yeah, I think that's good enough because some consider it cheating. I consider it I don't have to redo the stream. Okay, can we open all of the solar panels? Thank you very much. Yes, we can. Although, not like we're gonna need them, but still. Damn it, the frame rate is an issue. Let me check for a second what seems to be the problem. I actually have no clue. I think it might be... Oh, wait a second. Are you... No, it's not that. I don't know. I don't know why. I have no clue why it could be. Maybe it's like... What's my display frame rate? No, it's also fine. I don't know. I don't know, but we'll have to roll with it. I think before the next stream, I'll do a little bit more testing. I've actually had significant technical issues to the point where I wanted to call off this stream because my laptop doesn't have any USB ports or any HDMI ports, which means it only has Type-C. Duh. Which is really weird, but I thought it's not gonna be a problem. I can just use a dock. Otherwise, the laptop is nice. But the problem with that is that my Type-C dock that I'm using, it like requires external power. It doesn't get all of the power through the actual Type-C connection to the laptop, and it was connected to the same power brick as my fancy lights that I'm using so that you can actually see my face. And I think what was happening is because these lights sometimes flicker because they don't really have a very good Type-C, or they don't even have Type-C, they have Type-A connector, and it's like a little flimsy, so it like might flicker a little bit. And I think what was happening is that for like half a millisecond, the dock would lose power because of a voltage surge. And the problem with that is that my TV, which I'm using for the big fat monitor, it doesn't reacquire connection. So, for example, if the HDMI goes, like the signal is lost, what happens is that TV sits there and is like, okay, I'm gonna wait for the other device to tell me that it's on. And my Linux laptop sits there and is like, I'm gonna wait for the other thing to tell me that it's on. And they just both sit there and be like, well, I'm waiting for the other guy. And so when you have a working connection, it works. When you don't have a working connection, it's really, really hard to establish it because you basically have to just slam the connection on and off 1,000 times. And then for some reason, the TV at some points decides to actually send an initializing signal that, hey, I'm here, available, and then the connection is started fine and everything works, but like until that happens, it's like really weird. Okay, so let's actually create a little bit of a maneuver, try to get an intercept going here. Excuse you. Can you please show me a proper intercept? Thank you. I guess it can't. Okay, let me just try to line this up a little because I want to get at least some intercept going. Okay, that looks precise enough. Let's tell it to execute. Hopefully it's gonna be fine. Again, I'm really worried about it. So yeah, anyway, I almost wanted to call this stream off because of this issue, but then I figured that maybe I can use a different power brick to plug the Type-C extender that I'm using into it instead of the same one that's using for the lights. And it seems to be working. But it took me quite some time to figure out what the problem was, especially because every single time it disconnected, I had to like spend 10 minutes trying to reconnect it in the first place. In my 400 KSP hours, I have quick saved 4 times. You either have a very good and stable laptop, or you're just insane. Because I've seen my KSP crash. I don't even want to say 400 hours for it to crash. I mean, the mean time between failures is like 4 hours. So if I were to play 400 KSP hours, it'd probably crash 4 times. At least. If not 400 times. It's like, I don't know, it crashes a lot for me. Partially because I'm playing on Linux, partially because I'm playing with a lot of mods, partially because I'm trying to stream at the same time, and partially because my laptop is not very stable in the first place. It's a miracle my PC can run KSP considering it doesn't even have a HL2 without the CPU crashing mid-level transition. I feel for you, mate, but yeah. Well, I mean, the base KSP is actually a surprisingly easy to run game. It's when you're starting to add mods, especially visual mods, when you really start to feel a lot of pain. Hey, do you know of any late game tech tree expanding mods besides Far Future? Yeah, so you've named one, Far Future. It's kind of nice because they add a lot, but in general, well, I've spent some time looking through CCAN for Far Future, like late tech mods. The problem with that I have is that in most cases you just don't really need them because you don't start looking for mods just because they exist. You're looking for mods because you want to do something, and you have to like understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. By the way, let me fine-tune the closest approach to target here. It'll just automatically create a maneuver node that'll give me a perfect intersection. Very nice MechJab feature. I recommend that you use it a lot because it's very useful. To just line up docking for that, you know, last little bit of kilometers. Parallax continued troll face. Yeah, that thing is making me suffer quite a lot, but it does make for a nice visual picture. So, and because I'm a YouTuber, I'm trying to create exciting new visuals for my fans, which doesn't make me suffer at all. No, it doesn't. Anyway, so yeah, you have to really think about what you want to do with those mods. So for example, if you have a bunch of planets that are like hella far away and it takes you 10 billion delta V to actually get there, then you probably want to find some cool engine mods. if you want to have like cool colonies, you might actually look into some mods that allow you to build parts not on Kerbin. There's one which I don't remember how it's called, like some orbital construction thing. It kind of works. It's a little buggy, but you can make it work. But in general, yeah, you kind of have to always think about what problem is it that you're trying to solve, and that will tell you which mods you want to search for. Because there's no, like, benefit in trying to add, like, super powerful engines if you're going to, like, Luna or something. Yeah, I have planet-side exploration technologies. Oh, that's a nice mod. Those planet graphics would look great in KSP cinematics. Yeah, I'm trying to do that stuff, except for the fact that I didn't continue my Infected on Demand series for quite some time by this point. But it's mostly because my higher education was bullying the shit out of me, and that one does actually have a plot, and I never got to, like, actually finishing it. Well, not really finishing, I do know the plot, it's just that I want to make it slightly more exciting, because when I started writing it, I was doing it very amateurishly, and I want to make it actually engaging, and so I never really got to, like, fine-tune it. But hopefully I should start doing that well, not now. Maybe for the next couple of months. I'm still gonna have to finish my big fat degree that I'm doing, but still. Okay, let me quick save here just in case. But I should conceivably start doing it relatively soon. I mean, sooner than it was before, I guess. For building off Kerbin, I think it's called the Pathfinder. I'm just being schizophrenic with the wrong idea. No, I think it... We might just be talking about two different mods, but I remember one that's called, like... There are, like, two. One is, like, orbital construction, and the other, like, planet-side construction, maybe? I don't know. Please don't quote me on that. Although, of course, you will, because this is a YouTube stream. What am I hoping for? Okay, right now I'm just trying to align the space station roughly retrograde towards the, like, relative velocity minus for a target and prepare for intercept. By the way, where is our space station? Where is my Aurora? I don't see it visually. Oh, there it is. There it is. Look at that! Sunrise is in orbit, but by the time I looked at it, it's already over. Okay. So yeah, we should have like a almost perfect intercept here. You could probably time warp here. Carefully, not to explode. And hopefully... I mean, the space station is not that big for now, so hopefully it won't juggle itself into 1,000 pieces, which happens quite a lot because KSP physics. But that won't happen until we get 200 meters away from it. So at least we'll be able to view it in 4K. Hopefully not. Please not. Don't do this to me. Okay, so talking about the arms themselves, we have two arms. Duh. We also have this like small probe that'll actually help us to kind of rebuild the space station a little bit. It's going to be responsible for like actually connecting everything to everything, that sort of stuff. Did you mean planetary, extraplanetary launch pads, by the way? Yeah, that one. Basically, you kind of construct the vehicle in the VAB, it's just that you can launch it from like a different planet or something like that. Which is very nice. I like the idea. Okay, let's start the engine here a little bit. Try to slow down because we're coming in a little faster than I would like. And basically I'm gonna stop near the space station and then reattach some of the arms, do a bunch of that stuff. Okay. Let's just stop right here, like 100 meters away from it. Something like that. I'm gonna slow the rest of the way down with RCS. Let me... Oh, I already have it open. Okay, 0 relative velocity, MagJet, thank you very much. Okay, now, let's try to dock everything to everything. So the first thing that I want to do is actually close the solar panels so that they won't break off. And I am going to detach this right here. Okay, and hopefully now I should control this thing from here. Okay, let's press control from here. Let's set our target port to something like that. And let's try to dock this bad boy. Okay, so I'm gonna be docking quite aggressively here because I just don't want to spend too much time on this. So pardon me if I'm not gonna be explaining all of my actions. Yay, planetary building. I actually really like building space stations in KSP. The problem is that the EVA building is kind of limited by like the maximum mass that Kerbals can shove around, which is fine. It kind of makes sense. It would be weird for a Kerbal to just like take a 3,000-ton vehicle and be like, okay, you go here. On one hand. On the other hand, there's like not a lot of stuff that you can like actually build, which makes it a little annoying. Okay, let's press to aim towards target here. Gonna try to go into locked viewing mode so that I can actually see what's going on. Hopefully this is gonna be a quick docking because no one wants to spend 3,000 years on a docking sequence. I hope not. Okay, so kind of lined it up. Sort of-ish. Kill the RCS before we touch, and docking completed. Just like that. I think I am the best one in docking. I really do. Okay, so that was docking one of the arms. Now I'm just gonna have to go take the other arm and dock it as well, which will take a little bit of time. Okay, I'm gonna detach the probe here. Let me actually open the solar panels. Let me point myself towards the target. By the way, 0 relative velocity, please. Thank you very much. For some reason, during docking procedures, the conservation of energy law is like, it goes to hell for reasons. When you're docking in case B, a lot of the times you would just like randomly create velocity. And look at that! We've got some physics jittering going on. It's like not super visible right now, but it's happening. It's like, it's doing a thing. Let me just try to autostrut maybe, or that'll make it worse. Oh my god, it's jittering. I can feel the jitters. It's not exploding right now, but like maybe I can slow the jitters down with like slow-mo temporarily. That helped, but not a lot. Look at that. See, it's like jittering it a little because there's like not a very powerful connection here. Maybe I can actually... You know what? I'm just gonna ignore it for now because like it's not getting too bad. Maybe it added some velocity when it undocked. It should not be that much. That's the problem. It's like we got a whole 1 meter per second. This entire thing was docking to the space station at like half a meter a second, and the space station is like a lot heavier, so it should not have done that in the first place. You can see poor MechJep is trying to line it up with the whole jittering going on. Okay, let's just press kill rotation. Hopefully it can stabilize it all. Maybe? Yes? No? Maybe? Can you please stabilize? Oh wait, I can just use the regular time warp to do that. Okay, that kind of stabilized it, at least temporarily. Okay, can I please select that as my target? Control from here, point towards the target, and let's do a quick docking procedure. And of course, solar panels are blocking everything, because of course they do. Okay. Wrong direction, wrong direction. Okay. I think yeah. We're doing it, everything's fine. I mean, by the way, if you're looking at this and you're cringing the hell, I know how to dock properly, it's just that I choose not to. I know, believe me. I've done a couple of proper docking sequences, where you like actually line it up and do everything carefully, and there's like a 0% chance that something will go wrong, but like, no, not gonna do that here. Okay, let's just set it to kill rotation here, so that once it attaches, it hopefully won't explode. And it did not. Yay, I guess. Okay, let's close all of the solar panels, detach this bad boy, and get the other arm attached to the space station, except the fucking space station is trying to kill us. Okay, let's select the space station here as a target, press relative velocity 0 to just stop. Quickly switch to this bad boy, also select it as a target, and also set relative velocity to 0. So hopefully nothing will be killing anything. But yeah, you can see we were docking, like the probe, our construction satellite, was actually going away from the space station, and once it has docked, it actually creates a movement towards the space station, which is like, poof. Which is part of the reason why you can see my space station being positioned at like 75 kilometers instead of, for example, being at, I don't know, 72 or like closer to atmosphere, is because all of these docking sequences will probably push it like from orbit. There's like a decent chance that that'll happen. Okay, I'm gonna actually turn the space station here towards the docking port there, just because it'll make the docking procedure a lot easier. Not like it's required, but I still think it might make it slightly faster. And here, yeah, we're gonna have to control from here towards the target. Can you point, please? And let's put ourselves into a little bit of a intercept. Okay. Just like that. That looks good enough. Also, let's select that docking port as our target. Can you, like, please not be annoying? Thank you. Okay. I mean, exciting stuff, I know, but we have to do it. There's no more electric charge on some probe. Oh, damn it, I forgot to enable the solar panels on that thing. So here's the thing. We've got a lot of liquid hydrogen tanks there, and those tanks are using a lot of electricity, and I forgot to turn the solar panels back on, which is annoying, but nothing we can do right now except to try not do that anymore. I mean, we probably will have to use this probe here to go grab that, and that should retain control. Hopefully, maybe. Okay, right now let's focus on the actual like docking sequence, because that's the important part. I know this is a little boring, but yeah. We have to do it. I mean, we had our fair share of fun stuff during the launch of the Eve probes. We're gonna have a lot of fun when they actually arrive to Eve. And the reason why I'm not like time warping is because, again, in Kerbalism, you will have to be... Like, if you're playing with Kerbalism, one of the problems is that you need to resupply your space stations all the time, and it just takes forever to do so, which is part of the reason why I don't really want to time warp all too much. Because the more I time warp, the more of these resupply missions I'll have to do. Instead, I opt to have multiple missions at the same time. Okay, let's press control from here to target, and let's go dock to our probe there. Let's go catch it. By the time the docking is done, it's gonna be more detailed across than that one Jewel Crucified cinematic. I mean, I actually know what cinematic you're talking about. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what's going on, I don't know which author did it, I don't remember. But some guy made like a video where he had like a Kerbal being crucified by strapping him to like a large vehicle that looked like a cross and burning him in the atmosphere of Jewel. And well, yeah, this also kind of looks like a cross. Well, I mean, that's not by design. Okay, let me try to dock here. I'm sorry I'm not talking all that much during docking, because I'm trying to not crash. That's kind of important, isn't it? I think it is. I think it justifies the means. Okay, and docking completed. Okay, and... Can you, like, not do that, please? Okay, let's extend the solar panels here for a little bit more extra electric charge. Okay, let's select that as a target, and let's try docking somewhat to it. I don't know why... Oh, I had Smart RCS on. That's why it was turning RCS on. I was just trying to understand why the hell my vehicle is turning RCS on by itself. I was like, what the hell is going on? I understand now. Okay, let's point towards the target here. I want to dock that big thing to this port right here. Something like that. Hopefully we're, by the way, our orbit is fine. Yeah, it looks fine. By the way, yes, I can use MechJab for docking, and it does kind of work, except I'm not really proficient in that. That's reason number one. B, I want to make sure that I'm like aligning the ports and everything, which I think you can still do, but anyway. And C is because the frame rate is low enough to the point where I want to have full control at all times, just to be able to do something in case something goes really, really wrong. Okay, so with that out of the way, I'm actually gonna do a funny little thing here where I'm gonna detach this probe right here. I'm gonna undock it, because I don't actually need it here. I'm just gonna put it somewhere out of the picture for now. Yeah, something like that. Because I'm gonna be docking this bad boy here. It does have solar panels of its own, so it should be able to dock independently. Let's, by the way, set roll to 0. Let's do the same for our space station. Okay, that looks good enough. And yeah, let's dock them, and then we'll figure out what to do with this probe later on. I probably... The reason, by the way, I'm docking this thing in the first place is because it has a lot of fuel in it, leftover fuel, which is by design. I just want to refuel the space station as much as possible. And I also want to get rid of that stuff right there. Actually want to have the entire space station use these fuel tanks as their primary fuel storage and get those tanks away and out of orbit. The reason for that is because this is actually a probe, which means I can control it in case I really have to, and it can go and do a resupply mission of its own, and also it can deorbit itself more nicely. Like, I generally think it's like better, because that thing is also clogging up one of the docking ports, and I can't redock it, because if you look here, you can see that these fuel tanks are just rigidly attached to the rest of the space station. They have like a decoupler here, but I can't really like maneuver this thing. Whereas this is actually a probe of its own. The only problem is that we're about to enter blackout, so I want to disable cooling here temporarily so that we don't run out of electricity instantly, because we don't have a lot of electric charge on it. Actually, no, Kerbalism docks surprisingly accurately. The only problem is that while it's docking, there might be some physics problem. By the way, I'm just not completely fluent in MechJab dockings. And I actually don't think we even unlocked it. Yeah, we haven't even unlocked it by this point. So I simply can't use it right now at all, but even if I could, I probably still wouldn't, because I'm not that good at it yet. I'm still learning some of MechJab features, even though I have like a couple thousand hours playing KSP. Most of my playthroughs were when I was young, stupid, dumb, and didn't know MechJab existed in the first place. And some were lost forever to Realism Overhaul. Don't ever do that. Don't ever play that. That is... Those mods will suck the soul out of you. Okay, let's slow down here a little bit. Get a nice little docking. Careful. Careful, nice docking. Please do not... By the way, let's save the game here, because there's like a really decent chance it's just gonna explode as soon as I dock, due to physics wobbling. Hopefully it won't, but... Okay. It seems fine. Save the game here. Again, I'm doing way too much saving, but I just want to be extra sure that I don't screw this up. Where's this? Oh, okay, there it is. Okay. Let's stop here. And let's try to dock to the space station. Okay. Why does my RCS not work? Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna dock this probe somewhere to the hull of the space station. I think there's like, there should be a couple of free docking ports that I can use. I'm just gonna dock to those. Oh, I had the camera the other way around. I was like, why the hell is it acting so weird? Okay, let me fold solar panels because we're in shadow anyway. Not like they're doing much here. And let's get a nice docking sequence. Okay, let's slow down a little bit. Again, I'm really sorry I'm not commenting this too much. Maybe one day I'll be proficient enough in my streaming that I'm gonna be able to comment even when something is happening aggressively on screen, but what's more likely to happen is I'm just gonna start using MechJeb more and more, because it does allow me to just free up my mind so that I can just talk without having to concentrate on the gameplay. And it docked successfully, and nothing exploded successfully, so I think this is a successful mission. So what I'm gonna do now is, we should have one of the engineers on board, except I want to do everything in sunlight, so I'm just gonna time warp till we get to sunrise. Or at least close enough to it. Let me just time warp here a little bit. Yeah, that looks good enough. Okay, so what I want is to have one of my engineers, well, no, the only engineer, I'm gonna force him to, well, not force, ask him to put a docking port to that part, and I'm actually going to re-dock this probe to that part right there. The reason why I'm going to be doing all of this, by the way, is so that I can detach this little part with all of the fuel tanks and then control it, controllably, like, deorbit it. I know you can just press a magical button in the tracking station and destroy anything you want, but I still think there's a little bit of a benefit of doing it manually, because it just makes you appreciate it a little more or something. Before we can do that, though, I should transfer all of the fuel in my new fuel tanks. Brand new, nice and shiny fuel tanks. Also, let's re-enable cooling, because we don't want to waste fuel now, do we? And I think that's all. No, that's not all of the fuel. But yeah, gonna transfer all of the fuel and gonna detach that part. And then deorbit it with the construction satellite. Another reason is that forcing me to do this will actually get rid of the construction satellites, because I don't really want to have it around. Primarily because it's more parts. And my computer is suffering already, and KSP does not have the most stable physics ever known to man. It really does not. So, with that out of the way, we can actually dock again with our probe here. Luckily, it has docking ports on two sides, which means that it should be kind of excuse you. Okay. It should be kind of easy to dock to that docking port because we're aligned anyway. can I have a locked view? Thank you very much. Okay, just gonna quickly dock. Okay. Can you dock, please? Thank you. Okay. And now what I can do is I can detach this entire part of the space station and deorbit it. However, before I do that, I want to do one little tiny thing. I want to get rid of these winglets. Because they don't actually do anything useful in space, I can actually have Bill here take them with him. He's gonna detach them and he's gonna transfer them all of the way to that part where that's going to be deorbited, and he's gonna attach it to it. Okay, hopefully, by the way, I don't hit any solar panels on the way. That would be annoying. Yeah, we're just gonna attach them, like, somewhere there. Doesn't really matter where. Okay, Bill will take his time to do the whole laser thing. Unfortunately, because he's moving like crazy, he's gonna laser the fuel tanks, which might not be very good for their health. But, I mean, he's the expert. I'm just like a guy who's like telling him what to do. He's the whole engineer thing. Okay, let me take this with me. Yeah, another problem that I have is that I can't really use RCS controls when I'm dragging the parts. So I have to like I have to like place it, put myself in motion, and then take it again, which is annoying, but yeah. This will just help me get rid of unnecessary parts that I don't really need. Again, this is not something that I really have to do, but if I can get rid of some parts, I'm doing that. We have way too many parts here anyway. I think you actually, like, if you set the keybinds correctly, I think you can RCS while dragging parts, but I haven't really found a solution to do that. Okay, let's attach it somewhere there. Doesn't really matter where, as long as it's like on the part that's gonna get deorbited. And let's go get the last one. Look at that. We're doing orbital construction in Case B. Just like the founding fathers intended. And that's kind of it. Let's just put it somewhere there. And let's get Bill back to the space station. Where are the entry ports? Yep, there they are. Okay, something like that. Now, we can save the game, because, again, I'm being paranoid that the space station might explode at any moment, and I want to lose as little progress as possible. Okay, so now we have this, like, fuel tank assembly here, which doesn't have these stupid stabilizers that we don't actually need, and we can detach them off. Except that I want to set the kill rotation. And I think we're good to go. Decouple. There is no more electric charge in Aurora probe. How so? Oh, because I didn't have the solar panel on. Well, oops, I guess. I mean, it doesn't really matter. This thing can deorbit itself with the monopropellants. Believe me. Okay, we're gonna destroy it with the tracking station magic. Doesn't really matter all too much, but it can do that, I assure you. I've also tested that for some reason. I don't know why. When I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do in the future episodes, I've tested that. Terminate, magical terminate button, and we don't have to worry about it ever again. Nice. Its existence is gonna go get milk. Yeah. Just like your father. Alright, this is not the sus episode just yet. We're gonna have the next one where I'm gonna be acting completely differently. And we'll see how it goes, if it's like any good. By the way, let's set control from here, I guess. Or something. Control from here. Like that. Okay. And let's reorient the space station. But yeah, look at that. This is not a cross. Any similarities are completely accidental. This is just a space station with arms. These are arms. Trust me. Oh, by the way, let me just shut the engine down. Thank you very much. Before I accidentally do some stupid shit. Okay. But yeah, look at that. We now have a space station that has virtually infinite food and in general, like, supplies. So we have 4 years of resources. I mean, more like 5 years because we're mostly limited by food. We have all of the electricity we could ever want. And we have a lot of fuel in case we want to refuel something else. And with that out of the way, we can actually start one of the experiments that is supposed to be run during the lab. The reason it was not running for now is because it requires a lot of electricity. And we didn't have so much electric charge. Because, well, we needed to cool the fuel tanks. And they require quite a lot of cooling. And we just couldn't do that. We couldn't go through the night because we only had these puny little panels, which are like the emergency supply for the space station, the core of the space station. And with that out of the way, yeah, that's kind of it. Again, quick save because I'm paranoid. But this part is actually not too prone to wobbling. What I do want is I want to visualize autostrats. And yeah, we have a bunch of autostrats. I think we've got this thing. No, it's the other part. We've got this fuel tank, which is... No, it's not. Okay, what is being autostratted to what? I'm just trying to understand. I want to know where the autostrats come from. Excuse you? Where do we... I mean, we've got one here, but... It's not like I can toggle an autostrat here. Oh, wait, I can. Look at that. Okay. So yeah, we had some autostrats here. I'm gonna remove most of them because too many autostrats is bad. The only autostrat that I'm gonna leave is going to be a single autostrat from like the engine to the root part or something like that. Autostrat to root part, which is the core here. That, and I'm also gonna autostrat these docking ports. And that's gonna be all of the autostrats, which should provide good stability, hopefully. Yeah, look at that. I mean, we've got this, like, inverse triangle thing going on. That looks stable enough. If it had two lights on top like eyes, you could have named him... Okay, come on. Let's stop with the religious joke. I don't want to get cancelled. That was not the intent. I actually never noticed that it was like a cross until someone pointed it out. But yeah, we've got the space station. We had a contract to launch a space station around Minmus. One of the contracts that we had. Yeah, this one. What I wanted to do is launch essentially the same space station, dock it to the Aurora, get some fuel off of it, and then launch it towards Minmus. Something like that. But now I'm actually a little worried that the space station is just a little bit too big for my comfort, to be completely honest. Not entirely sure. So maybe I won't actually try to dock it to the Aurora because it's just a little too big. I'm just uncomfortable with the size of it, which I guess could be interpreted as something sus. Its size intimidates me. Okay. Let's think, because I haven't actually thought through what I want to do next. I mean, how long have we been streaming? We've been streaming for I don't know how long. Because I can't find a single clock here. Oh, we've been actually streaming for quite a long time. Jesus, I did not see the time fly by. Oh my god, we've been going for like 2 hours straight. Did not notice that. Okay. Actually, you know what? I think we could actually wrap it up here. We've got the interesting parts with the EVE missions. We've got another interesting part with, like, finishing the Aurora. And I think that's fine, because I also want to think a little bit how I want to go about future missions. There are, like, a few things that I want to generally do. Oh my god, I completely forgot about the vertical stream, guys. Someone was asking, what is the best altitude for docking? If you're still here, the best altitude for docking just really doesn't matter, but for stock KSP, I think the best altitude to have your main space station be is around 75 kilometers, because that gives you a little bit of leeway in terms of, like, changing your orbit a little bit in case you accidentally change it. You won't deorbit yourself instantaneously, but that is still low enough that you don't really think about it in terms of, like, extra fuel consumption. But yeah, so we've got a lot of contracts that we have. We need to do a bunch of missions to Minmus, because one of the things that we have are these stupid world first contracts, and I want to finish all of these contracts around Minmus so that we can start doing them around EVE. I'm not going to be doing them precisely, in that I don't really care about, for example, returning from EVE. That's not going to be a thing that I'm going to be doing very soon, because it's just dumb. You would normally first, like, get onto the surface, you would do some science, and only then would you start thinking about, like, return missions. What I do want is, I still want to finish this contract, and we'll also have this, like, contract for a Minmus space station. By completing these two contracts, I think we're gonna have enough money to fund further missions to EVE, because we actually don't have a lot of money. And we could potentially upgrade the launch pad, although I'm starting to think more into upgrading the space hangar and the runway so that we could do a bunch of flying. Since we've researched aviation anyway to unlock the heat shields, we might as well actually research, like, aerodynamics and have a little bit of flying because why not? And then we could even research like advanced landing, because that'll give us these light duty rotors, which means we're gonna be able to make helicopters, which is gonna be very, very interesting for Eve, especially if we're gonna be doing a sample return mission, because returning something from surface of Eve is hard due to the super dense atmosphere, but we can actually exploit that super dense atmosphere to just get high enough with like rotors and launch the rockets from there. And if we do that, then we might actually return a bunch of samples from Eve, which will give us a bazillion billion science. And from that point, we can really start thinking about launching manned missions towards Eve, towards other planets, because we're gonna have fairly infinite science. We don't really have to think about it like ever again. That's the rough plans. So yeah, recapping, probably the future episode is going to be something like set a bunch of stuff around Minmus, get a little bit of money. From that money, we're probably going to launch a bunch of probes towards Eve with the Helldivers mission. And then we're gonna start thinking about like sample returns and possibly manned exploration of Eve, because that's gonna be quite interesting. Yep. And with that out of the way, I think it's time to wrap this up. Let me name it the magical stream saving. Of course, it's nighttime, by the way. Have you noticed? Like every time I save, it's nighttime. Okay, with how dumb my sandbox creation are, if I made an Eve heli, I would have slapped small vertical engines on the end of blades and prates. Yeah, I've actually done a helicopter on Duna recently. Not like in this playthrough, just in my own spare time. It turned out actually quite interesting, because I was thinking about starting to use more helicopters, because I've never actually done that before. I kind of ignored the whole helicopter thing possibility at all, because I haven't really explored Eve, but it's super tempting on Eve. It's like really, that is one place where helicopters do make sense. And yeah, gonna try doing that. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for sticking around. And with that out of the way, I'm gonna be ending the stream. See you actually tomorrow. I think I'm gonna be making the next episode. So see you then.